Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for the segment, we have Michael Sokoll on Nasdaq's Market Intelligence Desk for an update on technical levels to watch in the Nasdaq 100. We'll also take a look at how earnings season's performing so far, and of course over the next couple of weeks when we see some of those big Nasdaq 100 names reporting. Michael, it's great to see you as always. Let's get a fresh take on technical levels to watch.
Yeah, so I think if you look at the chart for the Nasdaq 100, there's two things to look at. And one, and this is a chart from Brian Joyce, our technical analyst, is the RSIs. This is a weekly candlestick chart, and that's above 75, which would be in an overbought territory. And the second thing is, if you look at the weekly candlesticks, that last indicator is a tiny little almost red dot, but it's a doji there, and it's just a bearish indicator because you have your high, low, and close for the week right around the same level. And you know, it seems as though the buyers might be getting exhausted here, which dovetails a little bit into the fact that we've seen a little bit of a broadening out of the rally into other sectors and equal weight indexes.
Let's talk about that for a moment here. We're somewhat in the thick of earnings season. We still have a lot more to go. Of course, the next 2.5 weeks are going to be really key, especially for Nasdaq 100 names. How would you rate it so far? It seems decent. It's
decent in that there was no crazy surprise. To me, all of the gains this year have been all about multiple expansion, not about earnings. You have probably a prediction of about 7% earnings declines for the second quarter. It's not a surprise to anybody. We've had 2 straight quarters of declines before this, and now this is our third. This would be the biggest decline in 3 years in terms of quarterly earnings, but the market's been rising heading into it, so that's not a surprise. I think the key is you need some guidance to show we're going to have better earnings in Q3 and Q4, because you're going to need to support you know, the multiples that we've already seen rise.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make that the market really has been driven by multiple expansion, and you have to start to question, does the valuation, I mean, and obviously there's pockets of it. We've been talking about breadth participation for months now, so there's going to be certain sectors that are going to have to justify these valuations that they've accumulated.
Yeah, we've had a lot of, I don't want to call it euphoria, but positivity around what the Fed might do with rates and the top of the cycle, and we had a pretty good number for June. Was just a 3 handle, 3%, but keeping in mind that's a comparison of 9% a year ago. So you're not going to have those easy comparisons. So you might get 3 and 4 handles on your inflation for the next few monthly reports. And if the Fed's still looking at 2, then the market could once again be surprised that the Fed is going to stick to it longer than they expect, number one. And if odd things like, let's say, Russia breaking this grain deal happen, and that leads to food inflation or some other surprise, again, the market's kind of priced for perfection on the inflation front.
On the Market Intelligence Desk, you guys talk to all of our Nasdaq-listed companies. Is there a general sense coming from their leadership, how they feel about the macroeconomy? Is there anything that stands out from a sector perspective?
I think up until recently, it was always about the wages, and people worried about, can we attract workers? They were concerned about the wage price inflation. That might be a theme, if you want to call it that. In terms of their own performance, I would just generally categorize it as, companies want to participate in the rally that they've seen. They look at the broad indexes, they see, the Nasdaq 100 up 30% for the year, and they say, okay, when is this going to broaden out to our sector?
Yeah, all right. Appreciate the insight, Michael. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.